the budget committee met and worked on a vision for creating the 2012-13 budget as directed by the board. And we had a discussion at a previous meeting where you would like to see us create a vision and then create a process on how we are going to go about creating this next budget. And so this is all in draft format. So if you have any changes or comments that you'd like to share with us, that would be great. But the vision is there that we came up with, and it is the budget is the financial framework supporting the district's educational and philosophical mission, promoting the best education possible for every child. And along with that vision statement, then we have put together some kind of a process that includes principles. And the first principles that obviously will be taken into account when creating the budget are the primary guiding principles there. Obviously, we're going to comply with state and federal law. We're going to do the best that we can with the budget to maintain safe and healthy environment for students and staff and the facilities. And the budget will be balanced. Now, number 3 is definitely up for discussion. I anticipate that we will be discussing that primary principle further as we get into the budget process and how it's going to come together and look like, and we might change that. But that's what's there for right now. Then we get into tiers of guiding principles, and so we spent quite a bit of time discussing, priorities, parameters, philosophies, whatever you want to call it. But the terminology we came up with was tier 1, 2, and 3 guiding principles. And if you look through them, tier 1, we've talked about the lowest hanging fruits, as kind of a description of tier 1. I don't want to say the easiest because I don't think anything is easy, but it's the least, definitely the least damaging to what we're looking at as our current student education model. And so that tier 1 then is aligning staffing levels with enrollment, and then to follow any recommendation from the board, of course, for class sizes. Tier 2 potentially may get a little bit closer to changing the current educational model that we have. Can be potentially described as, getting closer to students, so to speak. And so the tier 2 guiding principles are to utilize attrition to realign staff rather than layoffs. That may be looked at as a given, but it's still a process to work through.
And that is something you're planning to talk about with the board more?
As we get closer to knowing that information, as far as retirements and things. Program sustainability versus total cost of ownership, a discussion and amongst the budget team needs to happen on the programs that we have, that we currently are operating, and are we looking out into the future with those programs? We obviously will have an idea of what the program is costing us now, but are we analyzing what the total cost of that program is out as far as we can? And so that we don't have surprises coming up, that to keep this program all of a sudden in 2 years, just as an example, the technology that's running it is going to be obsolete and we have to replace the technology for this program. Is that an expense that we're anticipating? So we're going to be looking at all of that. Greater program efficiencies over program elimination. So we're going to spend some time on programs in that regard as well. Before we run the program through the tiers on potential elimination, have we looked at every possible way to make that program as efficient as it can be? And some out-of-the-box thinking hopefully will happen, and we'll be able to make decisions that are better efficiency-wise, and then the program won't be eliminated. So we're going to work through that. Freeze, reduce non-instruction budgets over instructional budgets. Of course, that would be the operational budgets that are not close to the classroom. And then tier 3, potentially the most damaging for our current model of education that we have going. We are looking at the tier 3 being the last and closest to students is how we're describing that. And so it would be wonderful if we never actually even get to tier 3. But that's what we've put together. I gave you kind of a little visual using the funnel, idea that came from strategic planning on what the, tiers look like as we move through the process. And then the committee spent some time on the revenue side. And we looked at, all the sources that we could brainstorm on revenues in the school district budget at this time, and we have some work to do, with looking at those as well. And so we put them kind of in a priority order there in that funnel. And so we will bring forward more information on that as we keep going through the process.
And, just 1 second on that, I'm gonna keep you in on the loop with what's happening with the foundation.
Okay.
Because I know some of these that are in here actually, could come under that heading of the foundation that we're starting. For instance, the grants part, the working with community resources, the gifts. And we are having our first board of directors meeting on Thursday, and that we will be up and running soon.
Would you like me to add that in here?
Probably not, just in the sense that the foundation will run independent of the school district, but I mean, we'll be working closely. And I think eventually you'll be the administrative, maybe one of the administrative people working on that foundation. I know this is a busy time for you now, but I'm going to at least keep you in the loop as far as where we're going with that, and maybe the goals that that board is trying to set, and what holes they can fill in the budget that we have.
The intention then of what you're looking at with the guiding principles and the tiers and everything that you see is that when the committee gets to the point where we are actually making budget cut recommendations, we intend to attach the tiers that it relates to the reduction that we're proposing, give you the dollar amount on that reduction, and then, give you an explanation of it. And so, as we get further into it, that's the deliverable we hope to bring back to you. And so if you have any feedback on that, as far as needing more or less there, we would listen to anything that you have to say.
Well, that explanation though would include data, rationale. That's what you mean by the explanation, I just want.
Yeah. And then the last page, I identified some more budget process steps that are yet to come. We, as a committee, are going to spend some time going through the operational budgets, in more detail. That would be Joe's department, Larry's department, and Brian's department. We have not looked at those as of yet. We also listed for you budget communication ideas there, and so if you have any feedback for us on that. You did get an email from me this week about the website that has been updated as far as the business services page for sure. And then the link there that is available for anybody, whether you're a staff member, community member, a parent, whatever, to please post their comments or questions or ideas. It's always exciting when somebody from outside posts something that is something we can think of, or we're so close to it sometimes we can't think of everything. So I'm excited to have that tool out there, and I hope that it gets used. And as board members too, if you direct people there, my plan with that, as I said in the email, was to share it with all, the board and the budget team, and if we identify common questions, then we would post FAQs. We would post answers to that on the website where everybody will get to see it.
My understanding during that was that you were gonna update the board on that monthly?
Yeah, I was thinking at the meeting where we have the committees, where the committee meetings are, so the next board meeting, I will bring whatever is there. If I feel like there's something that's more timely than that, then, I'll take it to Heidi and we'll let you know sooner if you need to, if there's something goes over. Heidi and I will continue to write informational articles for the review, just to keep the community informed as best we can. And that's pretty much all I have. I have a couple ideas on there about, our current budget and where we are so far, in January already. We know we're not getting any snow. I mean, we know things about the current budget that we think are gonna be not what we budgeted, such as snow removal, potentially utilities, things like that. So that's all to be determined yet, so that's where we're at. That's kind of our draft for you as far as a vision and a process. And so so any feedback that you have for us, it's obviously not a action item on the agenda.
Well, I do want to say thank you. This is really well thought out, and this is what we had been asking you to give us, so I appreciate your taking the time to think about the philosophy of it. My other question for you, Doreen, is with the calendar, the tasks that were listed there, are we pretty much on task there? You know, for instance, I know we're having the budget meeting on the 14th. As budget worksheets are created and distributed to designated staff as determined by budget model.
Is that in January?
That's in January.
Yeah, that one, we might not make that one. That one might be a February one.
Okay.
That's classroom budgets. That's, you know, the
Okay.
building budgets for the teachers to determine their needs for, their classrooms for next year. And we haven't made it far enough into the process to nail that down.
Okay, so that will probably be in February then.
Yeah, and you know, some things are obviously come up that aren't on there, such as the negotiations now, you know, when this was created, we didn't have an idea that that was even, gonna take place, and so we're kind of focused on that right now.
Two other quick things. This line items here comply with state and federal laws. I know most of the state and federal laws I work with have a lot of ambiguity, and there's many different ways to interpret those, many different ways to comply. So I would hope as you look at these, you're all thinking about potential different approaches to the most cost-effective way to do what really has to be done. And you separate out those things that may be stated but don't necessarily have to be done. Secondly, I'm wondering about the capital. Our capital budget is a pretty large one. What the possibility is of looking at some potential capital restructuring.
You talking about that?
Yes. Not refinancing per se for interest rates. So we've already done that once. We could do that once. We did that. But like a lot of homeowners do, they might refinance the mortgage, say to increase the payout period to reduce the annual costs. So maybe think about some way to help address this capital, which is a big piece of our budget.
Right. I did have a discussion with the firm that helps us with our debt structure. Because specifically I was wondering if we could extend the debt that's on the high school. Obviously that's the biggest chunk sitting there and it's got some time left. And he said, you can't go beyond 20 years. I said, are you sure, really? Are you sure? And he said, yep, that's state law. You can't have debt longer than 20 years. And I said, even if you start over with it or refinance it or whatever? He said, no. So I can check into it further because it was kind of just a passing conversation. It wasn't where I got into it real deep with him, but I did ask him that at one point since I've come here, and I will do it again because I swear there's a way to do something different there. And I'll report back. I'll let you know details.
Thank you.
And will there be student input on this process?
On the budget process, well, I would hope the students would use the one-time money. So if you have any ideas for us on how to get that message to the students, it's a link on the district website, under the Business Services Budget Information tab. But it's open to anybody, and you can do it anonymously. So it would be great if you could pass the word. Okay?
And could we maybe put this in this school's newsletter?
It was in our December newsletter.
Oh, good. Good.
And it wasn't the last review article that we wrote, but you know, it's kind of buried in a paragraph, and I don't know, maybe we could think of a different blurb looking thing to get people to see it quickly instead of having to read the article.
But all of us that will announce at staff meetings or have already done so as well.
Did anybody else have any?
Thank you. Next item, enrollment, say